Well, howdy, howdy. This is Cubby Potamus, and today we're going to talk about shame. I've been recently watching a man by the name of Chase Hughes. I'd highly recommend to look him up on Facebook, and he was a military profiler. He's one of the best in the world at what he does. And he gave me an understanding of people that I'd been working towards. I kind of figured out the animal inside of us thing, but I did not understand how it worked, especially with other types of people, and he talks a lot about how our personalities are formed. And it just made so much sense, right? We love to think that people run towards things, right? We love to think that, your racist uncle who spouts off a half hour at a time, does that because he just loves hatred. Or maybe just because he was taught to think that way, to hate. We love to think that the good people are just good because they chose what's good, or narcissists choose to be that way, right? Workaholics, they just have bad priorities, or they're insecure, or, they grew up in poverty, but it really opened my eyes when I learned that we develop our personalities as something we're running away from, right? Somewhere along the line I learned that being bad was the worst thing that I could be, and manipulative, and using people, using women. And my whole life was spent trying to be anything but that, which is pretty simple, when you think of how shame works, In the tribal societies that people came from, they lived in fear of each other. I guess we still do, but, or there are the tribe rules and taboos and stuff, and you don't want to break those or you'll be cast out, right? And it's dangerous to go against that, because if you're cast out, you're dead. At the very least, your genes are. Maybe you can survive, but you can't reproduce, Anorexics, for example, will starve themselves to death because of shame. And we think that they experience an extraordinary amount of shame, but it's just the kind of shame that makes them not eat. I know people work 16 hours a day, 18 hours a day sometimes, and they put a tremendous amount of energy into not being lazy, like their parents talked, Dad probably talked about, the lazy people at work all the time, and was disgusted by them. He chose that they would never be like that. So they give all their free time away to work, and they get angry at the people at work who don't work. I value kindness very genuinely, but that was probably a lot more in response to the person that I didn't want to become than me being a good person, and it drove me to great lengths and great anguish. And I also survived by being invisible, so I just couldn't reach out. you know, and the poor narcissist, they're ashamed of being vulnerable so that they can't look inside and see how the guilt they have about things, you know, and they're always projecting that. You know, workaholics work because maybe dad didn't like lazy people, right? And racists, for example, are very judgmental people in other ways. You know, they judge what they grew up with, you know. Maybe they were very religious and, you know, anything but being a heathen. And they spend their lives trying not to be that way. You know, or high achievers, you know. You know, I know people for decades, you know, just decades, and they'll always brag about the same things. You know, they're highly achieved and they feel they're worthless. Absolutely worthless. Like an anorexic person thinks they're fat. Or, you know, a hard worker never thinks they work hard enough. And we spend our lives running from that. Thinking that if we can just run far enough away from it, we'll get away from it. But we never can. You know, and when we have all this shame, you know, things that point to that, they just devastate us or make us angry. And when you bring a person's shame up, you can make them just blow up too. You know, if you push that shame button, you can make people explode. But I think the beautiful thing is that when you understand a person's shame, you understand how to love them, how to heal them, and how to have compassion. And that's always been the most beautiful thing in the world to me, that kindness. Being a bit of a loner who sabotaged himself most of his life, I wanted nothing more than a little kindness, but I would always push it away. No, we live our lives running away from things, you know. And the way to stop that is to come to terms with our shame. And to come to terms with the shame of other people. I mean, you think about the hours like a person with a triple doctorate went through, you know. Hours and hours, weekends lost, not going on vacation for years, never having any time. They pay a tremendous price for that. And very judgmental people, judging all the time, they lose friendships. Right? People don't like them because they don't want people to look at them, you know, because they're afraid that if they saw, it would judge them too, and it has the opposite effect. They lose people, lose what they were looking for. Helpers, they're always doing things and always feeling like the victim because they're unseen. They're trying to get people to see how they aren't cruel, you know, and that's never enough. Like anorexic people are never skinny enough. We are all like that. You know, the narcissist doesn't feel guilty. It just bounces right off them, you know, but that means they don't experience love very deeply. And they hurt everyone they're looking for love from. And it alienates and it rips them up inside. I used to get so angry at those type of people, and now I just have nothing but sorrow for the hurt they feel. How they are just so all alone, right? And then they just need praise to fill that empty hole in their heart, but their heart's hard as a rock, so none of the love goes in, none of it sticks. You know, we all hurt, and we all suffer. The rich and poor are no different. The oppressed and the oppressor, we all suffer the same way. And the suffering doesn't change much. You know, until we can see that we all hurt. And we do not want to be in their shoes, and it's not their fault. They were just a little baby once. Innocent child. Had no choice in their parents or the life they lead. You can't blame anyone for being the way they are, because if you were in their shoes, you would be the same. You know, we love to think that we'd be different. And we'd be different because, you know, we'd choose what's right, but it was never a choice that anyone had to make. It's just a reaction they had to react to, right? And yeah, you know, we live in fear of each other, and we can't be vulnerable, and we can't be real. And no one admits their shame, and it's like a piranha tank out there, right? Social media and the world. Shame and blame and hatred. Being angry at people. Shoved down her throat all the time. And the wounds just keep getting ripped deeper and deeper with the more we try to fix it with the exact thing that caused the pain in the first place, that shame. And there's just so much hurt out there. And how I wish that I could just heal people. Make some sort of difference in this ugly, ugly fucking world. Anyways, well, this was Cubby Potamus, and maybe I'll see you around sometime.